Well, thank you for this, Teresa. Here we are, the first week of September. A lot of things happening, not just kids going back to school, Parliament coming back into office next week. We now hear that there may be some kind of a change and alteration, as if it wasn't needed for the EV mandates by the Carney government. I guess realizing companies are going bankrupt, moving on with public money. Um, none of the major auto manufacturers wanting to put any money towards this thing now that the country's pretty much tapped out, and you got Lion, Bright Drop, Northvolt, all really, totaling amount of carnage that we haven't seen on industrial side in a very long time. These white elephants were never designed to respond to the public demand. So not surprising to see that the Carney government's having to throw in the towel, but they are going to try to resist right to the last second and continue to try to make something and do something that is impractical and impossible to back. In the meantime, we're going to have to look here at energy prices in Canada and energy availability. A lot of people talk about, well, let's get some projects going, notwithstanding the fact that you still have significant burdens placed on producers and on pipelines. Bill C-48, Bill C-69, not allowing tanker traffic off the coast of British Columbia to carry away capacity, even if you were to build pipelines. Emissions caps, which discourage any investments from being made into future development of production. The very fact that it's going to take an onerous amount of work to try to overcome the impact assessment analysis, which really is designed to make it virtually impossible for any pipeline to get approved. But the most important part, it doesn't matter what the government is going to propose, because at the end of the day, investors have had a really tough time with the Canadian experience. We have really chased away investments, doesn't really matter what it is. And we've set a very acrid environment for people in which to make investments. So, Mark Carney, the Liberals, and all the wokesters out there who created 10 years of misery under Trudeau and company still have to make amends and account for what they've done to chase away capital from this country, capital that's now starting to show up, not just in terms of Trump's tariffs, because the country, frankly, was going into a serious recession well before Donald Trump came in. He just made it pretty obvious when he said no more electric vehicle mandates, which means 90% of all the automotive manufacturing we do in Ontario and Quebec and other places goes to the United States. They're not going to be forced to drive woke golf carts, over-glorified golf carts. They're not going to be buying real vehicles. And frankly, Canada has backed the wrong horse. The grifters in the auto sector who thought it was a great idea, and the auto parts industries who thought this was cool, have egg on their face. They should all resign in shame, because what they've done is they've damaged the automotive sector permanently. Now I'll go back. I did spend many years working with Toyota Canada, so I'm not unfamiliar with that field. I have a bit of broad experience there too, and know that hybrids was the future, as my company said at Toyota, not electric vehicles. And spending money we don't have, accumulating debt, and driving out jobs while ensuring that we would have no future for our automotive sector was a very dumb idea. And I think Canadians who voted for the stuff with elbows up had no idea that when we make these warnings, we make them with a sound basis, in fact. And that's one of the reasons why I think we're going to be in very serious trouble in this country for the foreseeable future. But let's get back to energy. We're looking at a pretty steep decrease on September the 15th. So around that weekend, in 2 weeks, we're going to see the switch from summer to winter gasoline. That should bring prices down at least 5-6 cents a liter from what I can see from the markets today. That's because the requirement during winter for gasoline is not as onerous as during the summer. And they changed some of the composition of gasoline. They can put butane in rather than alkylates. Butane is a very cheap product. We know about it for those who smoke and use, your butane burners, your Ronson burners, whatever you want to call them. But that is also because you want gasoline to be more volatile in colder temperatures, so that ignition happens much quicker, much easier, despite cold temps. Across the country, though, we're seeing some pretty interesting elements. We've seen very little in the way of change. Prices went down a little bit for gasoline in Atlantic Canada. They went up a tiny bit in Quebec. They stayed pretty much the same in Ontario in the past week. Western Canada, again, the same thing. They've come down a little bit from the days in which the Whitting plant in Indiana had come back online last week. That means that there's been about 3 or 4 cent decrease. Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC Interior. But for Vancouver, unfortunately, Well, anybody seeing this will know that's going to go up 7 cents a liter tomorrow. So in other words, $1.70 is going to $1.77.9. Demand is very strong in the Pacific Northwest, where the refineries are for most of the United States and the Canadian market. And we also have to be mindful of the fact that, at this time of year, when refiners aren't coming up to speed with producing like crazy, well, that leaves a bit of a shortage. And that's why we're seeing a bit of a blip in terms of prices. Vancouver back to $1.77.9, with Victoria not too far behind at $1.75.9 before it starts to come down again. The message overall, though, is that prices, at least on gasoline, should start to moderate over the next couple of weeks. That will certainly help with everyone's pocketbooks. Diesel, however, becomes more of a concern as weather gets colder. Diesel prices go up. Diesel's a proxy not just for transportation fuel, but it's also for home heating. Heck, it's even used for aviation fuel. And so I would expect that in the next couple of weeks, we can see sort of a tale of two fuels, gasoline going down, and of course, diesel going up. And that could mean, of course, a bit of an offset. One will be interested to see whether or not the federal government, in its willingness now to get out of carbon taxes, to get rid of the EV mandate, now start to realize that they can't make projects while they have those onerous impact assessment analysis requirements made by the previous government, which is still the same government that really discouraged a lot of investment from coming to this country. Whether or not there may be announcements that could also induce a much stronger Canadian dollar. And that's for the longer term. Teresa, when I talk about gasoline prices, I always have to take into account that Canadians lose 24 cents on every liter of gasoline because of weak Canadian dollar not staying on par with the United States greenback. Because Canada is not an attractive place to invest money, it's actually a very risky place when it comes to resources. And there's nothing new except a lot of government spending and going into further debt, which I think is going to rear its ugly head next few weeks when the federal government finally has the courage and intestinal fortitude to put out a budget. When that happens, I think you're going to see the Canadian dollar diminish even further. Even with interest rates dropping, it will be too little, too late for the country. And unfortunately, we've had 10 years to be cool and trendy and keep our elbows up. We voted 4 times for this in a row. Not all of us, but a good number of us. Now we're going to pay the real price. Will 5 times be a charm? I don't know. But between now and the next federal election, there's going to be a lot of pain in the economy, and a lot of it brought on by people who thought little of reinforcing the same bad policies, the same bad net zero government that's hurting and undermining Canada. That's it for this week, Teresa. Let's get back to this next week.